A man's voice, rough and cold, answered from the shadows. "Oh, you're awake. Welcome to the Valentine party, dear. You're where you belong now, no going back." This wasn't a party. This wasn't a chance to escape her struggles. This was the beginning of something far worse. Cynthia's whole world felt like it was collapsing. "No," she gasped through the pain. "Please, I don't want this. I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to go to school. I was deceived into this." The man took a step back, his cold eyes studying her. "You're already in our own world. To leave after entering here, you have two choices now. Sacrifice someone you love of the same blood, or give up your own womb. That is the only way out. You have 7 days to decide." The strange man's cold voice echoed. Cynthia stood at the edge of her family's tiny, old-fashioned home, the sun hanging low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dusty dirt road. It was a typical evening in their neighborhood, a humble village on the outskirts of town, where people lived day to day, often unsure where their next meal would come from. Her father, a tall, lean man with hardened hands from years of hard labor, was sitting on a small wooden stool by the busy market roadside, calling out to passing strangers in an attempt to sell the last of the tomatoes he had for sale. Her mother, with sweat dripping down her face due to the hot weather, was spreading out a mat under a tree, trying to attract customers with the few fruits she had left from yesterday's market. For Cynthia, the reality of her parents' daily struggle caused her deep pain. They had done everything in their power to provide for her, yet their earnings were often barely enough to feed their family, let alone send her to school. But despite the challenges, there was always a glimmer of hope in her parents' eyes. They had big dreams for her. After years of hard work and resilience to see their only child get into the university, their sacrifices had borne fruit. Cynthia had been accepted into the university. The excitement she felt was overwhelming, an opportunity to escape her current reality and build a future of her own. But beneath that excitement lay the burden of uncertainty. Her parents' sacrifices, their hope and their expectations now rested on her shoulders. She couldn't afford to fail. She must not fail. "I want the best for you, my daughter," her mother had often said, wiping her hands on her worn apron. "I want you to go to school, learn, and do something better than we did." Cynthia sighed. The thought of leaving this life behind for something better should have filled her with excitement, but instead it left her with a heavy feeling in her chest. Her mother glanced at her, noticing the somber expression. "What's wrong, my dear? You should be happy. This is your moment." "I am happy, Mama," Cynthia replied softly, her eyes drifting toward her father. His hands were rough, his shirt stained with sweat. She saw the quiet strain on his face, the weight of a life spent struggling. I don't want to disappoint you both." Her mother smiled, brushing a strand of hair away from Cynthia's face. "Will never disappoint us. You're going to make it, Cynthia. We've worked hard to send you to university. That's your future. Don't worry about us." Only if they knew the danger ahead of them. As her father handed her the envelope containing her university admission letter, his worn fingers trembling slightly, he spoke in a soft voice, heavy with emotion. "This is your chance, my lovey daughter. You've worked so hard for this. Don't throw it away. Remember, don't get distracted, focus on your studies, stay away from bad influences, and never forget where you come from." These words rang in her ears as she sat in the bus, staring out the window as the familiar streets of her village faded behind her. Her heart racing with both excitement and fear. She was leaving behind everything she knew, everything that defined her. The long hours her parents spent on the streets, the struggles, the constant hunger, the days they went to bed hungry with zero hopes of where breakfast will come from. They were all part of her. And now she had to face an entirely new world, one filled with people who didn't understand what it was like to be where she had come from. Arriving at the university felt like stepping into a different world entirely. The buildings were tall, modern and intimidating. Students moved around in groups, laughing and chatting, dressed in clothes that seemed to cost more than her entire wardrobe. Cynthia's heart skipped as she walked through the campus, overwhelmed by the sheer number of people, the bustling energy, and the fact that she now had a chance to become someone else. Someone greater than the girl who had spent her life begging for scraps in the village. She was assigned a room in the hostel. Her space was a small, cramped space with barely enough room for her bed, desk, and a small dresser. Her roommates, 3 other girls, were already inside. They introduced themselves with smiles and laughter, but their appearance made Cynthia feel out of place. They were dressed in brightly coloured outfits. They used the latest iPhones, their makeup flawless, their laughter echoing through the small room. It was clear that they were used to a different life, a life she didn't belong to. One girl, Lola, with long flowing hair and a confident smile, immediately caught Cynthia's attention. She had an air of someone who had been raised in privilege, someone who knew how to navigate the social scene effortlessly. Titi, the second roommate, had a mischievous glint in her eyes and a knack for drawing attention wherever she went. Sarah, the third, was quiet but carried herself with an elegance that made her seem untouchable. At first, Cynthia felt like an outsider, quietly observing her roommates' extravagant lifestyles. They spent their evenings talking about parties, hanging out with rich boys who paid for their drinks and dinners, and living a life that was completely foreign to Cynthia. They never seemed to worry about money or how to get by. In fact, they seemed to have everything figured out. Everything that Cynthia had never been able to get her hands on. As the days passed as a fresher in the university, Cynthia focused on her studies, attending lectures and staying after class for tutorials. The pressure to succeed, to make her parents proud, pushed her forward. But the pressure wasn't just academic, it was social too. Her roommates often invited her to parties, dinners, to hang out with their friends. Boys with expensive cars, designer wares and gold watches would visit their room, leaving behind a trail of laughter, flirtations, and promises of a life filled with wealth and ease. Cynthia couldn't help but feel a growing sense of inferiority. How could she, with her worn-out clothes and simple demeanor, fit into a world where money and luxury seemed to be the currency for friendship? Her roommates didn't understand her need to study or her reluctance to join in their carefree lifestyle. They teased her, calling her the bookworm, and questioning why she was so focused on academics when they had figured out a much easier way to live the soft life. They told her she needed to loosen up, enjoy life, and stop worrying so much about the future. But it wasn't just their lifestyle that made Cynthia feel torn. It was their constant need to remind her of the life they led. The nights they went out, the gifts they received from their boyfriends, and the constant chatter about money and comfort left Cynthia feeling small and invisible. She couldn't help but wonder, even as she buried herself in her studies, if there was a way to be a part of that world without losing herself. One night, Cynthia sat on the edge of her bed, her hands trembling as she stared at the phone screen. The last message from her parents was a brief one. "We don't have enough, Cynthia. We can't send you anything this week because sales at the market have been low." The words stung, and the silence in the room only made the emptiness feel heavier. She had no other option than to ask her roommates for food. "Lola, I'm really hungry. Can I borrow something for tonight, even if it's noodles?" Cynthia's voice was quiet, almost embarrassed to ask. Lola's eyes softened for a moment, but she quickly hid her compassion behind a smirk. You're always asking for food, Cynthia. Don't you think it's about time you stopped relying on us? You need to get with the program if you want to survive here." The words hit Cynthia hard, but she said nothing. She sat down at the table waiting for Lola to hand her something. As Lola tossed her a piece of bread, Cynthia couldn't help but wonder how long she could keep living this way. Her pride was taking a beating, and her heart ached with the realization that her dreams of a better life might be slipping further away. The next morning, as Cynthia was preparing to leave for class, her roommates gathered around her again. They looked serious, more serious than usual. Lola, Titi, and Sarah exchanged glances before Titi finally spoke up. "Cynthia," she began, her voice soft but firm, "we've been thinking. We know how hard things have been for you, and honestly, we can't keep watching you struggle. You don't have to live like this. We can show you how to make your own money, how to live the good life." Cynthia felt her heart skip a beat. She already knew what they were going to say. They had asked her a few times before, but she had always declined. But now, the desperation in their voices was harder to ignore. "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously. "They mean we can show you how to stop begging for food, how to stop depending on your parents." "There are better ways to get what you need, Cynthia," Lola said, her tone persuasive. "You don't have to struggle anymore. We've been living well, and it's not by chance, it's by knowing how to use what we have." The words hit Cynthia hard. She didn't want to be like them, but the pressure was mounting. She didn't want to go back to begging, to relying on her parents who were already suffering. She didn't want to be left behind, stuck in poverty while her friends lived a life she could only dream of. "Cynthia, don't be so proud," Titi added. "This is the way we live, and we want to help you. We'll show you the ropes. All you have to do is say yes." Cynthia hesitated, her heart torn. She had seen the way her roommates lived. They didn't worry about food or the next class they might have to skip because they couldn't afford the bus fare. Their lives were so different from hers, so easy. But there was something about their words that made her stomach churn. "No," Cynthia said firmly, shaking her head. "I won't do it." "All right's fine," Titi said, standing up, her voice cold now. "You don't have to, but just know this. Things aren't going to get better for you unless you change your mindset. You'll always be begging, always struggling, and one day you'll realize you should have listened." Deep down, Cynthia knew this was the moment that could change her life forever, but she was scared of taking the risk. It was already a few days into February, a month after resuming school, and Cynthia hadn't heard from her parents in weeks. They were barely able to scrape together enough for food for themselves at home, let alone send money for her school. She sat alone on her bed that evening, staring at the empty walls of the room. Her stomach growled loudly due to hunger, but she ignored it due to the thought of asking her roommates for food again, and the shame that comes with it. But then, Titi's words echoed in her mind. "You don't have to keep begging." Finally, Cynthia stood up, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. She couldn't keep living like this, not when every day felt like a struggle. Titi was busy picking out clothes from a pile of outfits on her bed. "Have you made up your mind?" Lola asked. There was a sly, knowing smile on her face. Cynthia nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm ready. Show me how you guys do it." Lola's eyes sparkled with approval, and Titi immediately stood up. "Good, we'll get you ready for tonight's Valentine's party." The preparations felt surreal. Titi pulled out a dress, tight, red, and shimmering with gold sequins. "This will make you look like one of us," she said, her tone almost maternal, like she was doing Cynthia a favor. Cynthia hesitated but said nothing as Titi helped her into the dress. It clung to her like a second skin, and for the first time, Cynthia noticed the way her roommates looked at her, almost with pride. Sarah handed her a small makeup kit. "You're going to need this. You can't be all bookish and shy anymore. You've got to look like the real deal." As they applied makeup, Cynthia felt a sinking feeling in her chest. She wasn't sure why, but something about the whole situation felt wrong. But the hunger in her stomach, the ache that gnawed at her with every second, made it easier to ignore her growing sense of discomfort. Lola smiled approvingly when Cynthia looked in the mirror. "There you go. Perfect. Now you're ready for the night." The girls grabbed their purses and headed out, their laughter echoing in the hallway. Cynthia followed, her heart racing, but there was no turning back now. She stepped into the black Jeep waiting outside, the car sleek and shiny. As they drove, the city lights blurred outside the window, and the closer they got to their destination, the more Cynthia's discomfort grew. The streets became unfamiliar. Darker, quieter. The buildings around them were old and grim, their windows cracked and covered in grime. "Where are we going?" Cynthia asked, her voice shaking slightly as she glanced at the others. "I thought we were going to a party." Titi glanced back at her from the front seat, a small smirk on her face. "Oh, we're going to a party, all right, just not the kind you're used to. Trust us, you'll have a good time." Cynthia's heart pounded in her chest as the Jeep turned into an isolated compound, far from the city's lively streets. The car slowed as they passed the tall, barbed wire fences and iron gates. The place felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. She could feel something was wrong with the location. "What is this place?" Cynthia asked again, her unease growing. "I thought we were going to a club." Lola's voice was too calm, too cold. "This is our club, Cynthia. Welcome to the real world." Cynthia's stomach dropped as the car stopped in front of a large, imposing building. The door opened, and before she could say anything, a man stepped out of the shadows. He was tall, with a hard face, his eyes sharp like a predator's. His gaze swept over Cynthia, then flicked to her roommates, who gave him a nod. "Here we are," Lola said, smiling with satisfaction. "Time to make some real money." Cynthia felt her body freeze. A chill ran through her as she tried to move, but her feet felt like they were stuck in cement. She opened her mouth to speak, to ask more questions, but one of the guards quickly ushered her out of the car, his grip firm but not painful. "Come on," he growled. "No time to waste." Her thoughts were spinning as she followed them inside. She thought this was just a party, a way to meet people, maybe make some connections. But everything around her screamed that this was far worse than anything she could have imagined. The air inside was thick, heavy with the scent of cigarettes and perfume. There were women in the corners, dressed in ways that made Cynthia feel small and insignificant. She looked around, her heart racing, trying to understand what was happening. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "This isn't a party, is it?" Lola turned to her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "This is where we do business. Welcome to the Valentine's party. You're part of the family now, Cynthia. Welcome to the trade." The words hit Cynthia like a slap to the face. "What?" Her voice cracked. "What do you mean? I didn't sign up for this." Titi laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "You didn't have to sign up for it. You're already in. We're all in this together now." Cynthia's stomach turned. She looked around at the other girls, the ones who looked so glamorous, so in control. But it wasn't control they had. It was submission. A sickening realization began to settle in. No, this is wrong. I don't want this," Cynthia cried, her body trembling with fear. But before she could run, a guard stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "You're not going anywhere," he said, his voice low and threatening. Cynthia's breath caught in her throat. "Please," she whispered, trying to back away. "I don't belong here." The man grabbed her arm roughly, pulling her toward a small, dark room at the back of the building. You belong here now, whether you like it or not. Cynthia struggled against him, but his grip was iron. She turned to her roommates for help, but they simply watched, their faces cold and emotionless. "Let go off me! Let go off me!" she shouted, panic rising in her chest. The man smiled, but it wasn't a smile of comfort. "You should have thought about that before you agreed to this. You're part of the system now." With one swift movement, he hit her in the head, and the world went black. When Cynthia woke, she couldn't see anything. She tried to scream, but her voice was nowhere to be found. She strained her eyes, but the darkness wouldn't lift. Panic flooded her chest. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice breaking. A man's voice, rough and cold, answered from the shadows. "Welcome to the Valentine party, dear. You're where you belong now. No going back." This wasn't a chance to escape her struggles. This was the beginning of something far worse, and there was no way out. "This is where you'll be working from now on," the leader said, his voice deep and unsettling. "This is the life you've chosen, Cynthia." Cynthia's legs felt like they were made of stone as she tried to process what she was hearing. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice weak. "You're in the business now," he said, a smile creeping across his face. "In Tracy. We do everything illegal here to make money. This is what we do here. And you're a part of it now." Cynthia's world began to spin. Her stomach lurched as the full weight of the situation settled over her. Her roommates weren't the carefree, glamorous women they had made themselves out to be. They were part of a twisted, dangerous world. And now, so was she. Her life had changed in an instant. The girl she had been, the girl who had dreamt of a better life, who had hoped to escape poverty, was gone. In her place was someone else. Someone trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. Where was she? What was going on? She blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to the dim light. The room she was in felt like a tomb. Stale air, the smell of dampness. A few feet away she could see other girls, all bound like her, eyes wide with fear, trembling from the same terror. Her heart raced. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "Where are we?" One of the girls, a young woman who looked just as lost as she felt, turned to her. "I don't know. I don't know how. I go here." Her voice wavered. Cynthia tried to steady herself. She wasn't alone, but the sense of isolation was overwhelming. She tried to calm her breath, but failed. Suddenly, a man's voice cut through the air, low and sinister. "So, you're awake. Good." Cynthia's body stiffened at the sound. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, wearing a dark suit. His face was hard, with a scar that ran down his cheek, giving him a dangerous look. He grinned, but there was no warmth in it. "What's happening? What do you want from us?" Cynthia's voice shook as she forced herself to speak. The man chuckled like he was humoring her. "What do I want? You're here because you are part of something much bigger than you ever imagined. Welcome to the Sea and Air Confraternity." The word echoed in Cynthia's mind. Confraternity. The man nodded slowly, his smile turning darker. "Yes. This is our world now, and you're going to be part of it." Cynthia's heart dropped. The world around her seemed to tilt. No, this can't be happening." She shook her head, trying to push the words out of her mind. The man stepped closer, leaning down to meet her eyes. "You don't have a choice, sweetheart. You're already in. There's no going back now." "Please," Cynthia begged, trying to make sense of what was happening. "You can't do this. Let us go. Let me go." The man's expression didn't change. "You're part of us now, and if you want to survive here, you'll follow the rules." "Rules?" Cynthia repeated, a mix of anger and confusion in her voice. What do you mean, follow the rules? I didn't sign up for this. The man's gaze darkened. He waved a hand toward the girls in the room. Each one of you will be marked, and now you'll be given a chance to prove you belong. If you want to survive here, you'll accept your place. No one leaves unless they complete the initiatio. Cynthia's stomach twisted. Initiation? What are you talking about? A cold laugh escaped his lips. The ritual, of course. It's tradition. You'll be marked, and then you'll make your choice. It's the price of surviving here. Marked? Cynthia asked, her voice barely a whisper, dread pooling in her stomach. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped back, and the guards dragged the girls to the center of the room. They were forced to kneel, their bodies trembling. Each of you will bear the mark, the man said coldly. It's how we identify those who belong. Cynthia's eyes widened as the man picked up a knife. The blade gleamed in the faint light. No, please, Cynthia cried, her voice breaking. I don't want to be part of this, please. The man ignored her pleas. You don't get a choice. You're already here. He walked toward her, and before she could react, the blade sliced across her skin. Pain exploded through her body, sharp and unbearable. She screamed, but the guard quickly covered her mouth with his hand. Blood dripped from the wound. She couldn't breathe. Every inch of her body screamed in pain, and her vision blurred. This is your mark, the man said. You're one of us now. Cynthia's whole world felt like it was collapsing. No, she gasped through the pain. Please, I don't want this. I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to go to school, to get away from my life back home. Please. The man took a step back, his cold eyes studying her. You're already in this world. To complete this initiation, you have two choices now. Give up someone you love of the same blood, or give up your own womb. Her heart pounded. What? What did you just say? Her breath caught in her throat, and she felt her chest tighten with panic. The man's gaze was empty, unfazed by her shock. You either sacrifice the soul of someone you share the same blood with, or you give up your womb. If you don't, you'll die in 7 days, and if you try to escape or talk about what happens here, you'll die sooner. No, no, Cynthia shouted. I can't do that. I won't. 7 days, he repeated, his voice echoing. If you don't make the sacrifice, you'll be dead. The weight of his words crashed down on her, and her mind filled with confusion and horror. She shook her head, struggling against the guards who held her down. No, no, please, don't make me choose. The man turned on his heel and headed for the door, his footsteps echoing as he spoke over his shoulder. Time is ticking, Cynthia. You have 7 days to make your decision. And remember, no one leaves unless they make a choice. The door slammed shut behind him. Cynthia was left in the silence, her body racked with pain. Her mind reeled with the impossibility of the situation. Sacrifice a loved one or lose herself completely. There had to be another way out. There had to be. But deep down, she knew she was trapped. There was no escape. Not anymore. She curled up on the cold stone floor, sobbing, her heart breaking as she realized the cruel reality of her situation. 7 days. 7 days to make a choice that would haunt her for the rest of her life. What would Cynthia do next? Watch out for part 2.